Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey, I know it's been a while since I have made a video. I was trying to get into a better routine of making videos, and then we are now several months into 2026, and this is the first video that I have put out of the new year. So, apologies for that. I've just been very busy. It does take time for me to make these videos, and I just got a lot going on with work, with some travel. For example, I just got back from a work related trip, and I've also had some writing assignments that I've been working on that I've been doing since the new year, and I'm trying to wrap up the second one, and hopefully that'll give me a little bit more time because there's some other writing that I want to do, which I would like to share with you guys, and then there are some videos that I want to get back into a better, more regular routine of putting out. Okay, so what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about an idea that is being propagated right now. And the reason that I want to talk about that idea is because I would like to challenge that idea because it is an idea that I find as ridiculous as I do dangerous. Now, the idea is that Trump has changed, that the Trump that we are seeing now is somehow different than the Trump that we saw in the past, to include his first term. Now, again, I'm not talking about I'm sure some people have the idea that Trump's been replaced or whatever. I mean, we hear about doubles or people being replaced. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not referring to that idea. I'm referring to many people who are spreading the idea that for whatever reason, Trump is different than he was just a few years before during his first presidential term, or that he has somehow just recently sold out. Now, I said a few minutes ago that I think that idea is both ridiculous and dangerous. I think it's ridiculous because I think it is just untrue on its face. Also, it's dangerous. It's dangerous because I think that to believe that it means that you are rejecting many of the red flags that were there all along, many of the warning signs that were there all along. It also reveals, um, I think it reveals that you don't truly understand how U.S. politics works these days or how the world works. You're not really grasping what the U.S. deep state is, what Trump's role is within that deep state, or the fact that the U.S. deep state is really what I would say is that it is just a colony of the global deep empire. Okay, so with that said, let's kind of go through this idea, and if I'm going to challenge it, let me at least share with you why I am challenging this idea and why I think it is so just untrue on its face, right? And therefore ridiculous, but also why exactly do I think that it is so dangerous to hold to this idea? All right. So, first, Trump has not changed. Okay. I mean, yes, that's my opinion, but I just think that when we look at the situation, no, Trump hasn't changed. For whatever reason, he is now revealing himself to be what he has always been, which is an asset of the globalist power structure that owns him, controls him, and has installed him into the White House. They installed him before, they have installed him again in this current presidential term. And they have done this with other US presidents. Trump is not unique in that regard. Now, the script that he follows is different. The role that he plays, the role that he has been installed to play, is different than the role that Biden played, which was to be the buffoon, to help set the stage for Trump to come back. It's different than the role that Kamala has played. And no, I don't think Kamala was ever going to be selected. I don't think that was what they wanted. I think they wanted Trump back in 2024, and so the globalist power structure put him back in. So he is, for whatever reason, now revealing himself to be what he has always been. Now, is that because he's in his second term? He's also quite old, so there's no way he's going to run again. So it doesn't matter that he keep the facade up. Maybe that's it, or maybe there is an actual reason some sort of operational reason as to why they are allowing or perhaps even causing the facade to slip, the mask to come down, so to speak. I don't know. Let's revisit that idea, perhaps as more information comes out. So yeah, so Trump, for whatever reason, is revealing himself to be what he has always been. But you could also say he is revealing himself to not be what he has never been. Well, what do I mean by that? Trump was never a champion of liberty fighting the deep state. Yes, I know that's what they wanted you to believe, but he was never that. And even if you believed that in the campaign leading up to 2016, by the end of his first term, it should have been unmistakably clear that he was not a champion of liberty. Trump is an asset of the globalist power structure. He is also very willing to operate on behalf of the Zionists because he is a Zionist. He's heavily influenced by Chabad Lubavitch. Okay, now, I'm not one of these people that believes that Israel and or the Zionists rule the world. No, I don't believe that. But they are very influential. I see Israel and I see Zionism as instruments of the global power structure. They do not sit at the apex of that power structure. They themselves are beholden to other power brokers that have more influence and call the shots. That's the way that I see it. So no, I don't think Trump answers to Netanyahu. I think Trump and Netanyahu have the same bosses, per se, whomever they may be. Okay, but let's look at a couple of just a couple of points here that may help us see Trump's consistency over the years, right? So think about this. I'm just going to name just a couple, right? But in 2017, so the first year of his first presidential term, the first year of his first presidential term, he did a couple of things that I think reveal quite obviously who he is, right? So what did he do in 2017? A couple of things here. So he visited the Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall. I know you guys will know what I mean when I say that. So he visited, so that same guy that visited the Wailing Wall, that has been accused of being a Zionist and heavily influenced by Chabad Lubavitch for years, visits the Wailing Wall. That is the same guy that is now waging war in Iran. That same year, 2017, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Remember, it was a huge thing in the media. He did that within his first year of his first presidential term. So the guy that visited the Wailing Wall as president, the guy that moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, is the guy that is now waging war in Iran on behalf of Israel. Now, again, let me reiterate, I don't think Israel runs the world. I do think that that is a cover story that is used. I do think that they want us to kind of think that, but it is a cover story. Israel has its role that it plays as well. Regardless, he is furthering this Zionist psyop, and he is doing the bidding of those who control him. Okay, what else? Well, towards the end of his first term, he ordered the strike that killed Qasem Soleimani. You guys remember that? Okay, that was in very early 2020. So the same guy that orders the strike that kills Soleimani is the same guy that participated in the 12 Days War last summer, supposedly ordered these strikes that obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities, yet somehow we still have to worry about them, creating a nuclear weapon. But also we've heard Netanyahu talk about them being weeks to months away from creating a nuclear weapon for 30 years. I mean, Netanyahu's been saying that for 30 years. Anyway, so again, whether it's the strikes on Soleimani, whether it's visiting the Wailing Wall, whether it's moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, Trump has been consistent. Whether it's participating directly in the 12 days war last summer, or the current war in Iran that we've now been involved in for 30 days, Trump has been consistent. Okay, but let's go one step further. The same guy that played a critical role in the treasonous COVID op, that had multiple objectives, but one of the objectives here in the United States was to kill Americans, injure Americans, redistribute wealth from American citizens to the power brokers, to steal liberties from everyday American citizens in order to further consolidate power for the power brokers. So this operation that was so instrumental over the last couple of years, we all lived through it, instrumental in stealing or stripping away our liberties from us, taking many Americans' lives, and yet Trump played a critical role in that. He pushed warp speed. We've heard him brag about it for years now, endlessly, about how significant an endeavor it was. After the rollout of the shots, Trump went around for years in touting the efficacy and the safety of the shot. He actually claimed for years that the shot saved 100 million lives. Do you think that Trump actually believed that when he said it? Or was he knowingly lying? I know what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Was he lying when he said for years after the rollout of the shots that the shots saved 100 million lives? Did he actually believe that when he said it, or was he lying? This is the same guy. The same guy that participated in this treasonous operation is the same guy that is lying now. Same guy that lied about the shots, same guy that urged you to take the shots, is the guy that lies about what's happening in Iran now, about the reasons for which we have gone to war, about our objectives of the war, about the threat that Iran represents. Now, I'm not here to defend Iran or engage in some sort of, apologetics for their regime. I'm not interested in doing that at all. But I'm not here to tell you that our side, that the American position is correct either. Okay, do I believe that Trump is lying? Yes, I think Trump is lying about the threat from the Iranian regime, regardless of what we think about that regime. I think he's also lying about some of the strategic objectives that have been gained thus far and some of the next objectives that are to be realized in the near future. Yes, I think he's lying to the American public. This is consistent with the lies that he has told in the past because he is a liar. He has not changed. Okay? The same guy that pulled Elon Musk into the government so that his Department of Government Efficiency could supposedly, identify fraud, waste, and abuse in order to cut out corruption and save billions of dollars. If you ever believed that narrative, then I'm sorry, but you were brainwashed. Okay, now we all have had to decondition ourselves from the programming that we have received all our lives. But if you believe that, then you were still conditioned, and you probably still need to go through a deconditioning or a deprogramming routine to see through these narratives. Okay? Doge had nothing to do with cutting fraud, waste, and abuse or identifying corruption in order to strip it out. It has everything to do with building out the technocracy, which Trump is an instrumental player in. Okay, this is probably why he talks about Greenland or now he's already talking about how Cuba is next. So is that part of building out the technate? Whether it is or isn't explicitly a part of building out, for those of you who are familiar with this map from long ago about the technate, whether that is or is not the intended design, the increasingly technocratic features of government are being implemented around us right now. The digital control grid is being constructed around us as we speak, and Trump is all for that. That's one of the reasons that he is now in office, is to build out the technocracy. And also, I would say to push for war because he can get those things done in a way that Biden or Kamala never could have. Just like he was the one who was used to push warp speed. You think they could have gotten Biden to push warp speed or even Obama or Kamala? No. But they knew that many conservative Americans, many of whom are Christians, and I say this as a Christian, as a believer, but many conservative, even Christian Americans would fall for the lies as long as they came from Trump's lips. The same guy, Trump, who for years was criticized heavily for weird comments that he made about women, underage girls, even his own daughter, is the same guy that in recent months has told you there's nothing to see here with the Epstein files. It's a hoax. Now, if you're familiar with me at all, you know that I think the Epstein files are an op. I think they're a lightning rod, not because those types of activities don't occur. They absolutely do occur. I just think that this idea of dangling the files out in front of the American public to get them to kind of latch onto them is an operation. Okay, but that doesn't mean that those types of activities don't happen. It doesn't mean that those activities are not rampant and pervasive throughout the U.S. government. They are. And so, yes, it is problematic when the U.S. president says there's nothing to see here. But this is merely being consistent with many of the allegations that have been leveled against him in years past. And no, I'm not being excessively prude here. I know many people would point at some of those comments from Trump and say, yeah, that's just locker room talk. I played sports all growing up. I spent my entire adult life up to just a couple of years ago in the military. I have been in many male only groups or male dominated groups for decades. I know how the boys talk when they get together, when it's just the dudes and not in mixed company. Okay, I know what locker room talk is. There are comments that Trump has made that are, open and available. I'm not talking about alleged statements that it's impossible to prove whether he did or did not say them. I'm talking about the stuff that you could readily find out there that's available that he has said. This goes beyond locker room talk. Yeah, I'm aware of how crude dudes can be when they're, amongst themselves. I got it. I understand that. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about locker room talk. We are talking about the types of comments that if the creepy uncle in your family made those comments, he would not be invited to Thanksgiving dinner. He would not be allowed over on Christmas Eve for the family party. Okay, those are the types of comments that we're talking about. These are not comments that Trump made when he was a very young man, where maybe it'd be like just a little bit more excusable that he would make a dumb comment. No, we're talking about comments that he has made throughout his life, even as a middle-aged man or older, in which they're totally inexcusable, right? But that's the same guy who is telling you nothing to see here with the Epstein files. Trump is also the same guy who staged the assassination attempt during his campaign in Butler, Pennsylvania. Yes, that event was staged. I'm sorry if you can't see that. It was obvious the day that it happened. It was obvious. I mean, I'm not the smartest guy around. And within 10 minutes of me realizing that event had been reported, I knew 100% that it was staged because it was so obvious and it made sense. And I've only become more sure of that, if you could be more sure than 100%, which is what I was on the day that it happened. I've only become more sure of that in the, since then, right? Now, people will say, how can you say it was staged? There's a guy who died. Well, first of all, you only think a guy died in Butler, Pennsylvania on that day because the media told you, okay? They could be lying. You're taking the word of liars, a lying institution, the media, and assuming that it's telling you the truth. But maybe that is correct. Maybe a guy was shot that day. That doesn't mean the event was staged, okay? It doesn't in any way mean the event was not staged. It merely means then they shot a live round into someone to kill someone to inject more realism into the act to make it look like it was, in fact, a legitimate assassination attempt. Now, if you know anything about deep state operations, then you know they have no qualms about killing innocent people in order to further their agenda. So, no, it is not outside the realm of possibility in any way whatsoever that they would shoot a live round into someone to either wound or kill them to make it look like someone had been shooting at Trump. But no, no live rounds went anywhere near Trump's ear. Okay. No, he was not shot in the ear. I'm sorry if you believe that. I'm sorry if you still believe that. You are brainwashed. Okay. Now, again, I'm not saying that as if to say that you're not smart or whatever. I am acknowledging that we have all been brainwashed. We have all undergone conditioning our entire lives. You have to break free from that program. And if you refuse to do so, at some point, there is a moral component to your discernment. And if you refuse to exercise discernment, then now you are engaging in a willingness to accept and support and perhaps even propagate lies. And that's a problem. Now, why is this so important? Well, what are they going to do with Trump now? Well, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Trump now. Why are they revealing who he is? Or why are they permitting him to reveal who he is, either wittingly or unwittingly? I don't know. But maybe we can offer some conjecture. Is this part of a new influence operation? Are they going to allow Trump to sink his own presidency? I think that's at least possible. I think there are indicators that point to that possibility. Why would they allow Trump to sink his presidency? Is the purpose of this influence operation to further demoralize the public? Yes, perhaps. They will weaponize our hope against us. One way in which they weaponize hope against us is by demoralizing a large portion of the population. Could that be what this is about? Perhaps. Because what happens if for the past decade, you have put your trust and your faith and your hope in this figure of Trump, and then you realize that he is sold out, whether he did it long ago, whether he did it recently? What is that going to do to you? Maybe that is the intended purpose. I don't know. But if it is, this is where I think that we have to be on guard, and where I would say, here's what we have to be on guard for. Trump is not the last demagogue. He's not the first. There will be others. And if you can't recognize this typology that is used to create this construction of a demagogue, if you can't see it with Trump when it is so painfully obvious, you will miss it in the future. You will miss it in the future when they present you with a new demagogue, and you will fail to realize this is not actually a true independent person that I'm seeing. This person is acting. This person is playing a role. This person is a construction of the deep state, meaning they have been, to some degree, made or at least steered along a certain path to be where they are. That's why it's so important that we understand what has happened with Trump, that we see the signs and we realize this could be used again with some other figure. And here's what I think we need to be looking out for now. Who is the next champion of liberty that they may appoint? Because if there's going to be a new champion of liberty that they are going to appoint, now is the time that we should be on the lookout for that person. Because what that person or group may do is gain credibility and start to become propped up by the media or others as they point out the failures of Trump. Now, I would say there's nothing wrong in pointing out the failures of Trump or any other leader. But if by doing so, it's part of an influence operation to build their own reputation, to build their own credibility, and then we see some sort of astroturfing campaign to prop them up, we should be on the lookout for that. And here's and again, I'm guessing here, but here are a few ways in which I think that could happen. There's already talk about a new party. What will that look like? Who will the leaders potentially be of that new party if that new party comes to fruition? I don't know. But they look for ways to get people to lose hope in the current system and then opt out of the current system and then opt in to a new alternative. But in many cases, that new alternative is just as controlled. So now is where we need to be looking out for this new alternative they could be giving us. So I could see narratives being used that will push Americans to see past the binary construct of the Republicans and Democrats. Now, I think that's very helpful. I've been saying that forever. Get past the donkey versus elephant smokescreen. It's a dialectical trap. However, yes, it may be good to see past that binary trap, but if you get caught up in a new trap that is propagated by the same power structure, then you haven't actually left the control. You haven't actually broken out of their control. So right now, I think we need to be on the lookout for newly anointed champions of liberty and start to look at all the failures of Trump, and in doing so, amass a new following. Now, who is that going to be? I have no idea. We need to be on the lookout for now. Maybe it will involve a new political party. I don't know. Maybe it won't. But I could see how it could, because there's so many Americans that at least are starting to question the two primary political parties. That people are starting to want to break out of the Republican slash Democrat divide, and that is that's good. That's a good step forward. But don't then fall into the next trap they have laid for you. Now, if there is going to be a new party or these new figures that they want the Americans to follow and get behind, will that happen for the midterms or will that happen for the 2028 election? I don't know. So what's going to happen for the midterms? Will there be midterm elections or will we be in war and they'll cancel the elections? I have no idea. I mean, there's a lot of time between now and then. Who knows? But I could see where they could fabricate a situation, which perhaps they're doing now, where Republicans lose the midterms by design, Democrats win the midterms, and then there's some sort of massive swing kind of back the other direction in 2028. Or there is this collective realization amid the American public that both political parties suck. And then in 2028, it allows for an environment in which this new political party can supposedly emerge and gain popularity, and thus sucker in a lot of Americans that have lost faith in Republicans or Democrats. That could happen too. So maybe it could happen quickly before the midterms, but I think maybe it's more likely that it happens in 2028. But regardless, I do think that is something that we need to be on the lookout for. Now, I don't have any particular animosity towards Trump. Um, I, I view Trump the same way that I view plenty of other U.S. presidents who I think have been enemies of the American public. Okay, now the Christian in me absolutely believe. First of all, I don't make any pronouncements in any way about someone's spiritual faith. That is not my call. I don't do that. Everyone's a human being just like me. I got my own sins to worry about. I got my own salvation that I should be worried about. So I don't talk about that. But in a temporal, earthly sense, yes, I think Trump is our enemy. I think he is engaged in operations such as the COVID operation, such as a lot of the stuff that is going on now. Yes, I think he staged a fake assassination attempt. Yes. So I think he is deceiving the American public. I think he is engaged in operations that will hurt people, that may kill more people, that have already killed some, and that will further strip us of our liberties. So yes, I do think that he is dangerous, right? And in that regard, I think that we should call that out, just like we would with any others that are engaged in the same type of activities. Can you and should you pray for Trump? Yes, of course. Of course, you should pray for Trump. You should always pray for your enemies. And yes, I do think that Trump is an enemy of the American public. I think that the US government is the enemy of the American people. If you don't believe that, then I think you forgot what happened the last couple of years during the COVID operation. But I haven't forgotten. But yes, you can and you should pray for Trump. You should pray for all our leaders, okay? Because we're all susceptible to, the machinations that are out there. Trump is no different in that regard. Yes, there may be very sinister activities that he is willfully engaged in. I don't know. I don't know how he got mixed up in this stuff. It's kind of not my call. But I will call out what he is doing because I think that is important. Because I will not stand by idly and allow our country to be destroyed and allow our country to become the seedbed of further evil and destruction here at home and also abroad, right? And that's not to somehow exonerate Iran or any other country out there of their own problems. I'm not here to do that. That's not what I'm doing, right? But yes, you can and should pray for your leaders. You can pray for them to exercise their own discernment. Is there a possibility that Trump could turn around? Listen, I'm not here to say one way or the other. Is he going to have some sort of change of heart? Listen, that's between him and God. But you can and should pray for Trump, pray for your leaders. I should. When I say that you should, it's a reminder for me to do the same thing because I got my own problems I should worry about before I point the finger spiritually at others. Okay. And that's why I kind of make that distinction between engaging in spiritual judgment where, I think Trump's been involved in some very bad stuff, right? But not my call as to what his eternal fate is. That's between him and God. So the distinction between the spiritual side and then the more earthly, temporal side of events that are happening right now in our world here, in which I think many of these actions and operations are meant to further evil. I mean that very literally, and also to steal our freedoms. So anyway, I hope that made some sense. Again, let me just sum up by saying, no, Trump has not changed. He is revealing himself to be what he always was. And at the same time, he is clearly, unequivocally showing that he is not what he never was. So thanks. Sorry it's been so long since I made a video. I'll try to start making these more regularly.